Hello my friends, good to see y'all today. A while back I put out a video on my split sled that I was rebuilding. I think I told y'all that mine were kind of worn out, so I should go ahead and rebuild them all. And I have a two-headed sled where you can spin the sled around and use both sides for two different cuts. So I've got to remake that. So I thought y'all might like to see how it's made, and maybe you'll find some use out of it. If you do, I'm thrilled. If not, that's okay too. Just thought I'd show you guys, so any little thing that might help you. Okay? Let's get at it, my friends, and build us a flip sled. Hey, my friends, before I start on the flip sled, y'all saw the video, or if you did see the video about the split sled, I was a bonehead. I didn't show the front when it was finished here. The sacrificial or secondary front that makes it a one-piece sled is held on by these knobs in the back, which just go through and tie into some of these threaded inserts. And that's what holds it on in place. And like I was telling you, since the sled gets split in half, I had to split my block in half. In hindsight, I should have attached the block in one piece, made the two cuts, and it would have left more wood in this area for protection. But I'm going to be real careful. This is a good safety feature. At least I can't fall onto the blade or nothing silly like that. And like I had told y'all in the other video, I went ahead and added 4 more hold downs on the outside. I like putting these in the sled a lot better than those slots. The slots, they're okay, don't get me wrong. My other sled has them. They tend to weaken the surface a little bit because you take quite a bit out of the plywood in depth. And these work just as well. From one point there, I can reach any distance, forward or back. It makes no difference. 4 simple ones would do the trick, but I overkill everything. What can I say? And when I had originally built it, I just had my bottom piece on, and then my hold down, my connecting board, which put it back together as one sled, but it wasn't tall enough. So, to be able to use my same removable backboard, I had to make my tall back a little different than you normally would. And I went ahead and used solid wood back here. I would never use solid wood up front, and I'll explain why to y'all on that later. You always want to build a sled out of plywood or particle board. Okay? So, wanted to show you, blades up, because I forgot to show this. In the thumbnail, I actually had some knobs just sitting in these holes, and I didn't really realize that when I took the picture for the thumbnail. But they just unthread, and that's how you remove this removable front, so you can use it as a split sled. Put it back on, and you can use it as a single sled. So, wanted to show y'all before we get started. Here we go, guys. Here's basically what I'm going to be using for this sled. One piece of 3/4 inch 24 by 24 inch plywood, 4 pieces of 24 by 4 1/4 inch plywood, and 2 slot tracks and 1 guide track by Craig, and some knobs. I've got to make some little stop blocks, but we'll get into that. Wanted y'all to see the basic material. Alright guys, I've put a mark right down the middle of the 24 by 24, right at 12 inches on center. The sled is 24 inches deep. It could be longer. It doesn't have to be 24. I'm going 24 by 24. It could go 24 by 30, 24 by 48, whatever your heart desires. Why longer? Longer support on the boards you're cutting. Very easy to get it dead center. Can see my line right through the holes. Going into plywood. Tighten them with the screwdriver after I get them in place. Alright guys, the track's on and it has a little play in it. We don't want any play in it. I'm sorry guys. There we go. These little plastic inserts to go into the guides. So I'm going to put those in and take all the play out of the track before I make cuts. Alright guys, by tightening down on these little inserts in and out, I can take the play out of the track if I find any. And I dropped it in a second ago. Look, I told y'all I'm the official head member of the Bonehead Club. So don't be the Bonehead Club like me. Put your adjustment screws in before you mount it. Still got a little play. There we go. Guys, the reason I like using these instead of the wooden ones, wood will expand and contract. No matter how perfect you get it, wax it, sand it, till you could blow on it and it moves across the table. With the moisture in the air, the up and down of the temperature, it's going to expand and contract. The aluminum will not. You're never going to have a problem with it expanding, contracting. The tolerance on this is 1,000 times better than you could get on a piece of wood. Alright guys, what I did there was made my 2 marking cuts just to know where they were at on the board and nothing else after I had the track on and adjusted. One on a 45, then flip the sled over and make one on the straight cut. Alright my friends, let's talk about crosscut saws. Take 2. Alright my friends, let's talk about crosscut sleds. Alrighty, I've seen a lot of sleds. I've seen videos of them. A lot of people will use solid wood on their backboard, their guide board, their lineup board. What do you call a sled? The front or the back? The side closest to you. Let's refer to that as the front of the sled. Pushing forward, I guess it would be the back of the sled. But either way, the front of the sled. You want to make it out of MDF or out of plywood. Alright, you don't want to make it out of solid wood. A lot of you probably have. I have also, believe me. Just years and years, wood expands and contracts. The moisture in the air and the heat and the cool, there is movement in wood. It's inevitable. You can't help it. You go look at a deck. You lay those boards touching. 2 months later, they got an inch gap in them. They swell, they close. Out in the weather, does the same thing inside. Wood moves. How can you calibrate a crosscut sled within a couple of thousandths of an inch when you're using solid wood is what you're calibrating it off of? The wood is going to move. It's going to swell, it's going to expand, it's going to contract. So for that reason, you always want to use plywood or MDF. Now plywood, MDF, particle board, composition board, press board. God, nice solid plastic would be the best thing. But anyway, plywood is also wood, but it is very, very thin layers of wood, crisscross and glued together in grain in the opposite directions. So you get no movement out of it. When you do inlay work into wood, you always do it very thin, 1/8 of an inch or less, for that exact reason, for wood movement. And I've had some sleds, some very nice sleds that I made where I used solid wood. And I had to wind up taking the fronts off of them and redoing them. And I'm not kidding you. If you've seen my shop, you know I kind of over-decorate things. Well guys, this is a push handle for a crosscut sled. Right? It's carved, it's inlaid, it's mahogany. Made a beautiful push handle for a crosscut sled. Except I got movement in the wood. That's what it was mounted down for, was a crosscut sled. Just like the rest of my shop, a little bit of an overkill on the woodwork. This was also a handle for a crosscut sled. Those are some butterflies that are made out of wood called pink flame, snake wood, wangay, yellow heart, and I believe some padauk. Right? This was a handle for a crosscut sled. Solid wood moves. Make your push handles out of plywood or out of MDF. You won't get any movement in that product. Make your base out of plywood, Baltic birch, or any high quality plywood. A real good cabinet grade, oak, again Baltic birch. Don't use solid woods on it, guys. It'll move on you. Glued up and ready to dry. In a while, that is. Hey guys, I'm sure all of y'all have or even have seen a framing square. Not much to them. Every now and then you want to check them. And if you want to know how to check a framing square, get a piece of wood with a straight edge on it. Make sure it's got a straight edge. And draw yourself a line. Okay? Flip the square over and draw a second line. On top it, if you want, I like to stay just a little distance off. And I'm going to amplify that so y'all can see what I mean a little better. Okay, you can see the first two lines drawn close together. And then the outer lines drawn close together. That's over 16 inches. That square is about as square as you're going to get. Unless you're a really dull, boring person that sits around and mopes all day, then you're square. Threaded insert, guys. Hope that's showing up. Allen set. Alright guys, I got the inserts in, and I much prefer using these inserts than putting a track in the board for the clips to slide on. And the reason being, when you do put an insert or a track into a board, you take out a lot of the wood, which takes away from a lot of integrity of the sled staying flat and true. It works, don't get me wrong. I've got one done like it, a lot of done like it, but I've learned over the years these inserts work much better for me. I can put this anywhere, catch any distance. It doesn't matter. Front of the board, back of the board, sideways. No matter where I want to hold a board, I can hold a board with these. If this is the front of the track, and as y'all remember, I put that little dado for the sawdust. stay there. And if this is the front of the track, remember I put that little dado. Now you have a flip sled. Okay guys, I'm going to go ahead and square up the sled and get the 5-sided test done on it to get it square. I'm not going to show that on this video because I'm bad explaining math is my reasoning. I would confuse you to death. I understand it, I know how to do it, but I would never do you fair explaining it. There are lots of other great videos on that. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done real quick, and then I'll be right back with you, my friends. Alright guys, I'm glad I didn't show y'all me doing that five cut test. I've done it many times, but I mean, I kid you not, 2 days. I just keep going at it, and it's hard for me to explain the math, so there's plenty of great videos on that. But question for you, why does the table saw manufacturer put 2 slots in a table saw? Why? So the cross-cut little gauge that they give you, you can use on either side of the blade. There's one track to the left of the blade, one track to the right of the blade. That's why your saw has 2. Will a saw track just as well using one track and not using both? Of course it will. Except this one gets stuck. Of course it will. Everything can be done with just one track. When we build cross-cut sleds, we tend to use both of them because they're there, I guess. Alright guys, let's talk about table saws and sleds for a moment. Alright, your basic sled. A front, a back, a cut through the middle, a squared up back, and make your cuts. Right? All I can get out of this sled is one straight cut. This sled has 2 tracks on the bottom. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to get my cut and a slot for my dado cuts? If I were to flip the sled and make a cut, you can see how close together the 2 cuts are by flipping the sled, which is telling you that your miter slots are not placed equal distance from the blades. This is not 5 inches from the center of the blade. This is not 5 inches from the center of the blade. All table saw manufacturers do that. I have not yet to find one that has 5 1/16 and 5 1/16 to the slots. Why do they do an offset on it? I have no idea. I've used a lot of table saws. I've worked with a lot of table saws. If they did line up perfectly, I could flip my sled and use both sides of the sled as a headboard. But they don't line up, so I can't. Now, with that said, let's take one track off of this sled for a moment. Clean that up later. Will that saw track just as straight with one as it will two? Absolutely. Why do most people put 2 tracks? Because table saw has 2 tracks. So we use both of them. Do we need to? No, we don't. Alright. Now, with only 1 track on the saw, I can move the saw over and use this cut for my dado cut. Alright guys, what if the manufacturer did dramatically offset the slots on the table? One side would get a little closer for your factory gauge, but it could be done in adjustments to work by having my 1 track in my first slot. Remember, first slot, second slot. This one does not exist. I get my straight cuts, move the saw over to my second track. I get my 45-degree cuts. Spin the saw track. I get my first dado cut. Let's say 3/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch. I move over to my track. I get my second cut. My 3/8, my 1/4 inch, my 3/4 inch, whatever you want, dado cut. I get 4 different cuts out of 1 sled. The straight cut, the 45-degree, and 2 dados. That's if the tracks will offset more, or if you do happen to have your tracks on your saw offset enough so that you've got at least 1 inch between these cuts where you still have good stable wood, you can build your sled this way so that you can get 4 different cuts off of the same sled. Okay? This is a what if, this is reality. So for today, let's get back to reality. Buy slot. You don't exist no more. Alright guys, why have a flip sled? Making 2 different angle cuts and not having to move your setting blocks. I've got my block set up for 9 inches and I'm making my cuts and making my cuts, and I've got to make some 45s. Flip my sled. Set up for my 45-degree cuts, whatever I need to make. Make my cuts. I can revert back around to my straight cut piece that I was making before. I never move my settings on it. By spinning the saw, using both sides as the head of the saw, I can make 2 different cuts without moving my setup blocks. You could do the exact same with this sled for dados. Make one your 1/4 inch dados. Make one your 3/8 inch dados. Whatever dados you happen to commonly make a lot of. That way you can make use of both sides of the sled and maintain your setup for your cut, and you can come right back to it without having to change it. Alright guys, on this sled I put some wipe-on urethane on it and I waxed the bottom of it. Get this nice and sharp for you guys. Like I say, from one direction I can make my 45-degree cuts, and I still have a surface piece for my cut-offs to fall off on. And you could build this sled as long as you want. It doesn't matter. For more flat surface for your cut-offs, you could build it narrower if you wanted to. The width doesn't matter. The depth doesn't matter. Make my straight cuts, I split it around. And I can use it for straight cuts in this direction. Set my stops, use my hold-ups, leave my setup in place, turn it around, use it for 45-degree cuts. Again, you could do the same thing with different dados on each end on another sled. Okay, my friends, and as you'll know, you can go a lot farther than this with the sled. I could put the top crag track that holds the sliding stop that flips out of the way. I could put one on both sides instead of this track right here. Again, if my blade on the saw stop were to hit the track, it would, and my fingers were touching it when I was going across, I would set off my saw. So my saw will only reach 3 1/8 inches off of the surface. So I set it high enough so that it never hits my blade. That way I keep the integrity of having a solid piece, not having to put a cut in it, in the track, that is, by the blade, so that the metal doesn't touch the blade. You could build yourself a 45-degree jig for this saw for cuts. You, again, could make it longer on one side. You could build a dust collection port that rode on some adjustment heights made out of plexiglass, where my hose came down in the top of it, like so, and rode with the sled. And I very well make one of those and do a video of it if I do. But I tend to go kind of just basic on my sleds. I don't really like those stops with a tape measure and all that, setting it by the tape measure. No matter how accurate it is, I'm still going to come back and check it again. So I stay away from them. That's my preference. You can do it that way and it works great. Hey my friends, I find that little sled helpful. You're able to make your 45s and your straight cuts with one sled. And again, like I say, you could do that with a regular sled. You would just have to have one edge of it where the 45s don't have anything to support them on the cutoff side, that is. But if you build it where you can flip it around from head to head, you can build it as long as you like, again, as wide as you like, and you can get your 45s and your straight cuts. You can build one to do 2 different dados. If you've got molding blades in your saw, well, we won't get into that. I have a molding blade set for my saw. I don't think I've ever used them on any video, but I will here in the future. So I hope y'all like my little sled there, guys. If I can answer any questions, please don't ever hesitate. I'll answer everyone. To all my subscribers, I thank you. I thank you so much. I am honored. If you've subscribed and you haven't left a comment, please do let me know so I can say hello to you, please. If you're new and you're subscribed, please leave a little comment and let me know. I really like to say hello. I truly do. It's okay to make the video and all that. It's more fun interacting with you guys. I love hearing from you and where you're from and the different stories and what you've got going on. So please don't hesitate to comment. Good, bad, it's okay. It doesn't matter. Everything works. So, hope y'all enjoyed the little video, my friend. I've got several other projects I'm working on still. Some I've been working on for too long. So I've got to go ahead and get them done. So, guys, I hope y'all like that. And I'll see you in a little bit, my friends. Take care now. Bye-bye.